Multi-billionaire visits his daughter and heiress at the ranch, but breaks down in tears at what he sees. Arthur Harrison never imagined he would one day have to face his daughter after 5 years of absolute silence between them. The desperate call from Mrs. Martha, the family's former housekeeper, had come in the middle of the night with news that made his world collapse. It was when she said the ranch had caught fire during the night that Arthur felt his chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt in years. Brooke was fine, she assured him, but there was something in the woman's voice that had haunted him ever since he hung up the phone. Now, standing before the smouldering ruins that were once the proud St. Evelyn Ranch, Arthur held a bouquet of daisies with trembling hands, the same flowers his wife, Evelyn, used to pick from those fields when Brooke was still a child. The dark suit he wore contrasted with the desolation around him. Charred wood, destroyed roof tiles, and the acrid smell of smoke still hanging in the morning air created a scene that seemed straight out of his worst nightmares. But it wasn't the material destruction that made him cry. It was knowing that Brooke hadn't called him when it all happened. The last time father and daughter had spoken was during a terrible fight over the management of the family business. She wanted to expand the ranch with sustainable farming methods. He thought it was a waste of time and money. The harsh words they exchanged that day still echoed in his mind. Arthur remembered perfectly the moment Brooke grabbed the pickup truck keys and said she didn't need him for anything anymore, that she was going to prove she could make the ranch thrive her own way, without his interference. And she had succeeded, from what he knew through third parties. In the last 5 years, the St. Evelyn Ranch had become a benchmark for organic agriculture in the region. Brooke had transformed the fields of her childhood into a modern, profitable operation, proving that her ideas weren't just the dreams of a young idealist. But now, looking at the wreckage, Arthur wondered if she would accept his help, if she could swallow her pride and allow him to get close again. The daisies in his hand seemed small and inadequate before the magnitude of the situation. The sound of footsteps on the dry earth made him turn. Brooke was walking toward him, her brown hair tied in a messy ponytail, clothes dirty with soot and an expression on her face he couldn't decipher. At 28, she had inherited her mother's beauty, but also the stubborn determination of the Harrisons. They stood facing each other for long seconds, the weight of years of silence creating an almost palpable barrier between father and daughter. Arthur wanted to run to her, hug her, and ask forgiveness for everything. But he knew Brooke wouldn't be won over so easily. "What are you doing here?" Her voice came out colder than he expected. Arthur swallowed hard before answering. "Mrs. Martha called me. I needed to see if you were okay." "I'm fine. You can leave now." The coldness in his daughter's voice hit him like a punch to the stomach. Arthur looked again at the rubble, trying to find words that could break the ice between them. "Brooke, I know that I—" He paused, reorganizing his thoughts. "I came to offer my help. I can rebuild all of this. Better than it was before." She laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Of course you can. With your money you can buy anything, can't you? Except a daughter who forgives you." Arthur felt the tears burning his eyes. He had rehearsed this meeting during the entire 3-hour drive from New York City to the small town in Montana, but nothing had prepared him for the raw pain in Brooke's voice. "Daughter, He held out the flowers to her. "I brought these for you. I remembered how you and your mother used to pick them together." Brooke stared at the daisies for a moment, and Arthur could swear he saw her eyes well up, but she quickly composed herself and crossed her arms over her chest. "I don't want your flowers, Dad. I don't want your help, and I definitely don't want your pity." "It's not pity, Brooke. It's love. I love you, even though I've been terrible at showing it." She shook her head, taking a few steps back. "If you loved me, you would have supported me when I needed it. If you loved me, you wouldn't have tried to sabotage my projects." Arthur felt his blood run cold. "Sabotage? What are you talking about?" "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Brooke laughed again, this time bitterly. "Grant Vance from the Heartland Rural Credit Union. He told me everything last week. How you pulled strings to get my loan denied 3 years ago. How you pressured organic seed suppliers to raise their prices just for me." Arthur's world began to spin. He had done those things, yes, but with the best of intentions. He wanted to protect Brooke from a failure that could have been devastating. He wanted her to come back to the safety of the family's traditional business. "Brooke, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain. I understand perfectly. You never believed in me. You'd rather sabotage me than give me a chance to prove my worth." Her words were like knives in Arthur's chest. He let the daisies fall to the ground and ran his hands over his face, feeling the weight of his mistakes. "You're right. I did those things. But it was out of fear, not lack of faith in you. I was afraid you'd fail and get hurt the way I got hurt when I lost your mother." Brooke seemed to waver for a moment, but quickly steadied herself. "Mum passed away 10 years ago, Dad. 10 years. And in all that time you couldn't get past your grief long enough to be a decent father to me. I tried." "You tried?" She cut him off, her voice rising. "Where were you when I graduated from agricultural college? Where were you when I won the Young Rural Entrepreneur Award? Where were you when I actually needed you to believe in me?" Arthur had no answer for any of those questions. He had buried himself so deeply in work and in the pain of loss that he had forgotten how to live. He had forgotten how to be a father. The sound of an engine interrupted the tense conversation. An old pickup truck approached, kicking up dust, and Arthur could see a young man at the wheel. When the vehicle stopped, a man of about 30 stepped out, dark-haired in simple work clothes with a kind look about him. "Brooke, I brought the medicine for the cows that got hurt yesterday," the young man said as he approached. When he noticed Arthur, his eyes narrowed slightly. "Good afternoon. This is Caleb Foster," Brooke said, her voice automatically softening. "The local veterinarian. Caleb, this is my father, Arthur Harrison." Caleb extended his hand politely, and Arthur shook it, noticing the firmness of the grip and the calloused hands of honest work. There was something in the way the young man looked at Brooke that made him immediately understand the situation. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Harrison. I'm sorry about what happened to the ranch." "Thank you," Arthur replied, studying the young veterinarian. There was sincerity in his eyes, something he rarely encountered in the business world. Brooke stepped closer to Caleb, and Arthur noticed how much more relaxed she seemed in his presence. "Caleb's the one who helped me save the animals during the fire. If it weren't for him, I would have lost a lot more." "It was the least I could do," Caleb replied, gently placing his hand on Brooke's shoulder. "You did an incredible job keeping your cool and organizing the evacuation of the animals." Arthur observed the interaction between the two and felt a pang of something that took a moment to recognize as jealousy. Not romantic jealousy, but a father's jealousy. This unknown young man had been there for his daughter when she needed him, while he had been absent as always. "How long have you two known each other?" Arthur asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. 2 years, Brooke replied. "Caleb has been helping with the veterinary care for the ranch animals." There was more to this story. Arthur could feel it. The way they looked at each other, the ease with which Caleb had touched her shoulder, all of it pointed to a relationship deeper than just a professional one. "May I ask how the fire started?" Arthur directed the question at both of them. Caleb and Brooke exchanged a glance, and she sighed. "Apparently it was an electrical issue in the main stable. The lighting system I had installed last year. Something went wrong during the night." "Which company did the installation?" Arthur asked, his business mind automatically seeking someone to hold accountable. "Sterling Electric Cool," Brooke answered, and Arthur felt his stomach tighten. He knew that company. More accurately, he had recommended that company to Brooke through an intermediary, hoping they would do such a poor job that she would give up on modernizing the ranch. The plan had worked better than he expected, but in an absolutely devastating way. "Dad? Are you okay? You've gone pale." Brooke noticed his reaction. Arthur couldn't speak. Guilt hit him like a giant wave. Not only had he sabotaged his daughter's projects, but now he discovered that one of his sabotages had resulted in the destruction of the ranch she loved so much. I need to sit down for a moment," he murmured, looking for something to hold on to. Caleb quickly steadied him, guiding him to the wooden bench that had survived near what once was the main house's porch. "Would you like some water, sir?" "Dad, what's going on?" Brooke approached, concern replacing her earlier coldness. Arthur covered his face with his hands. He needed to tell the truth, but he knew it would destroy any chance of reconciliation that might still exist. Brooke. Sterling Electric Co. He stopped, taking a deep breath. I'm the one who recommended them to you. What do you mean recommended? She asked, confused. Through an intermediary. One of my contacts at the Rural Association. I asked him to recommend a company that wouldn't do a very good job. The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur could hear only the sound of the wind passing through the charred debris, and his heart pounding furiously in his chest. Are you telling me you were responsible for the fire that destroyed my home? Brooke's voice came out as a dangerous whisper. Not directly, but yes, I wanted you to have trouble with the modernization, so you'd go back to the traditional methods. I never imagined it would result in this. Brooke pulled away from him as if she had been slapped. Caleb instinctively put his arm around her, offering support. Dad, how could you? Tears began to roll down her face. How could you be so cruel? Brooke, please, let me explain. Explain what? She screamed, her pain turning into fury. That you destroyed my life twice. First by sabotaging my projects, now by causing the destruction of my home. Arthur stood up, trying to approach her, but Caleb subtly positioned himself between them, shielding Brooke. Sweetheart, I never wanted this to happen. I just wanted to protect you. Protect? Brooke laughed through her tears. You call that protection? You destroyed everything I built. I can fix this. I can rebuild everything. You can't fix anything, she shouted, her voice echoing across the empty fields. You can't fix the 5 years we lost. You can't fix the trust I lost in you. And you definitely can't fix... She stopped abruptly, pressing her hand to her chest. Can't fix what, Brooke? Arthur asked, alarmed by the sudden change in his daughter's behavior. She turned to Caleb, who nodded encouragingly. Tell him, Brookie. He needs to know. Know what? Arthur insisted. Brooke took a deep breath, wiping the tears from her face. I was pregnant, Dad. The words hit Arthur like a thunderbolt. You... were. 3 months, she continued, her voice breaking. I lost the baby last week. The doctor said it was the stress from the fire, from the despair of watching everything I'd built being destroyed. Arthur felt his legs give way. Caleb had to steady him again, helping him sit down on the bench. My God, Brooke, he muttered, tears now streaming freely down his face. I didn't know. How could you know? She asked, the bitterness returning to her voice. You haven't been part of my life for 5 years, and even if you were... She looked at Caleb and then back at her father. Would you have approved of your grandson's father? Arthur looked at Caleb, truly seeing him for the first time. A small-town vet, probably without much money, without connections, without the kind of pedigree he'd always imagined for the man who would marry his daughter. He started, then stopped. All his usual objections seemed small and petty in the face of the pain he had caused. Exactly, Brooke said, interpreting his silence. You never would have approved of Caleb. A poor small-town vet isn't good enough for a Harrison, right? Brooke, that's not it. Yes, it is, Dad. It's always been that. Appearance, status, money, that's all that's ever mattered to you. You never cared about what made me happy. Caleb cleared his throat softly. Brookie, maybe we should pause this conversation. Your father doesn't look well. Arthur looked at the young man with gratitude, realizing that even in the face of the accusations, Caleb maintained his compassion and courtesy. There was something about him that reminded Arthur of who he himself used to be before he became hard and calculating. No, Arthur said, forcing himself to stand. Caleb is right to worry about you, Brooke. And I need to know more about him. About the two of you. Why? Brooke asked, suspicious. Because if I lost a grandchild, if I lost the chance to meet the man my daughter chose, then I need to understand what else I lost in these 5 years of stubbornness. Caleb looked at Brooke, who nodded reluctantly. There's not much to understand. We met when Caleb came to take care of a cow that was sick. He saw me as a person, not as Arthur Harrison's troubled daughter. "And you two, you've been together for 2 years?" Arthur asked. "Yes," Caleb answered. "But officially I hadn't asked her to marry me yet." "You hadn't?" Arthur noticed the tense. Caleb sighed. "I asked her 3 months ago, the same day we found out about the pregnancy." "And?" Arthur looked between the two of them. "I said no," Brooke murmured. Arthur was confused. "But why? You love each other. You were expecting a child." "Because I couldn't imagine a wedding without my father there," she confessed, the tears returning. "And I knew you would never approve of Caleb. I knew you would do everything to end our relationship if you found out." The confession hit Arthur harder than any accusation. His daughter had refused to marry the man she loved because she couldn't conceive of the ceremony without the presence of the father who had abandoned her. "Brooke," he whispered, "and now it doesn't matter anymore, right?" She continued, "There's no more baby, no more house, and definitely no more family. No." Arthur felt as if the world were collapsing around him. The destroyed ranch was nothing compared to the damage he had done to his daughter's life. She had lost her home, her baby, and her chance at happiness, all because of his misguided attempts to control her. The sound of an engine interrupted the moment. An old pickup truck was approaching, and Arthur immediately recognized the driver, Mrs. Martha, the housekeeper who had worked for his family for over 20 years. The 60-year-old woman stepped out of the vehicle with the agility of someone accustomed to hard work. Her grey hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and she wore a blue dress that Arthur remembered seeing her use on Sundays when she worked at his house. "Mrs. Brooke, I brought those clothes you asked for," she said, carrying a bag. "And also some food. I imagine you haven't had time to think about that with all this chaos." It was then that she noticed Arthur. Her eyes widened for a moment, then narrowed in a way he knew well. Mrs. Martha had never been afraid to speak her mind, even to him. "Mr. Arthur," she said, her tone formal but cold, "I didn't expect to see you here." "Martha," he replied, feeling like a child being scolded. "Thank you for calling me." "I didn't call you for your sake," she shot back dryly. "I called because Mrs. Evelyn made me promise I would always take care of Brooke. And taking care of her includes making sure you knew when she needed help, even if she's too proud to ask." "I don't need his help," Brooke protested. "Dear," Mrs. Martha said, her voice softening as she spoke to Brooke, "you lost your home, your baby, and nearly lost some of the animals in the fire. This is no time for pride." "How did you find out about the baby?" Arthur asked. "I found out because, unlike some people, I kept in touch with Brooke all these years," Mrs. Martha answered, her tone turning stern again. "I was here when she found out she was pregnant. I was here when she lost the baby. Where were you?" Arthur had no answer. Mrs. Martha continued, clearly having things she had held back for a long time. "You want to know where you were? You were in your ivory tower building empires and forgetting you had a daughter who needed her father. Mrs. Evelyn must be turning in her grave." "Martha." Arthur tried to interrupt her, but she raised her hand. "I'm not finished. Do you know how many nights I consoled this girl when she cried because her father didn't call? How many times she asked me what she had done wrong to make you stop loving her?" "I never stopped loving her," Arthur protested. "Then why did you stop showing it?" Mrs. Martha shot back. "Mrs. Evelyn always told me you were a good man who got lost in grief, but grief is no excuse for abandoning a daughter." Arthur looked at Brooke, who was watching the exchange with tears in her eyes. "Brooke, did you really think I didn't love you anymore?" "What was I supposed to think, Dad?" she asked. "After Mom passed, you became a stranger. You stopped asking about school, about my dreams, about my life. When I tried to talk about the ranch, you changed the subject. When I needed advice, you were always busy." "I was trying to keep the business running, trying to make sure you had a future. I didn't want money, Dad. I wanted my dad." Brooke burst out again. "I wanted you to ask about my day. I wanted you to teach me the things you knew. I wanted you to believe in me." Caleb approached Brooke and gently embraced her, offering the support Arthur should have given years ago. The sight made Arthur's heart tighten even more. "Dear Brooke," Mrs. Martha interjected softly, Why don't you go rest for a while? You haven't slept properly since the fire. Caleb can take you to my house." "Good idea," Caleb agreed. "Brooke, you need to take care of yourself, Erev." The doctor said to avoid stress. Brooke nodded reluctantly. "Dad, I need some time to process all of this. About Sterling Electric Co., about you sabotaging me, about everything." "I understand," Arthur said, even though every fiber of his being wanted to beg her not to leave. "Where are you staying?" "At my house," Mrs. Martha answered for her. "And before you ask, no, you can't go there. Brooke needs space." Arthur nodded, knowing he had no right to demand anything. Can I at least help with the animals that got hurt, or with anything you need?" "The animals are well taken care of," Caleb said. "We managed to house them all on Mr. Silas's property, the neighbor. As for financial help, I think that's something Brooke needs to decide." "I don't want your money," Brooke said automatically. "Brooke," Mrs. Martha said gently, "your house was destroyed. You lost furniture, equipment, everything. This isn't about pride. It's about practicality." "She's right, dear," Caleb agreed. "You can decide later how you want to handle the reconstruction. For now, what matters is that you recover physically and emotionally." Arthur watched how the two of them cared for Brooke, offering exactly the kind of support he should have given. He felt a mixture of gratitude and envy. "Caleb," he said, making the young man turn around, "may I have a word with you? In private?" Brooke looked suspiciously between the two of them. "Dad, what are you up to now?" "Nothing, sweetheart. I'd like to get to know the man you chose better." Caleb looked at Brooke, who nodded reluctantly. "Fine. But if you try to offer him money to leave or anything like that, I'll never speak to you again." "I won't do that," Arthur promised, even though the idea had already crossed his mind. As Brooke and Mrs. Martha headed toward the pickup truck, Caleb and Arthur walked a few meters toward the rubble of the main stable. "Mr. Harrison," Caleb began, "before you say anything, you need to know that I love your daughter more than anything in this world, and I won't leave her for money, threats, or anything else you might be thinking." Arthur was caught off guard by the young man's frankness. Actually, that wasn't what I was going to say." "It wasn't?" Caleb seemed genuinely surprised. "No, I wanted to—" Arthur paused, reorganizing his thoughts. "I wanted to thank you for being there for her when I wasn't, for loving her the way she deserves to be loved." Caleb studied Arthur's face for a moment. "You're being sincere." "Completely. And I also wanted to apologize to you for all the prejudices I had about you without even knowing you. From what I can see so far, you're a good man who makes my daughter happy. That should be all that matters to a father." "It should, but it rarely is," Caleb replied with a small smile. "Especially when the father is someone like you, used to having control over everything. You're right, I am controlling. I always have been. But it cost me the most precious thing I had, my daughter." Caleb looked in Brooke's direction, who was talking animatedly with Mrs. Martha. "She talks about you sometimes, you know, not with anger but with sadness. She remembers the father you were before Mrs. Evelyn left." "What was I like before?" Arthur asked, curious. "She tells stories from when she was a child, how you taught her to ride a horse, how you built tree houses together, how you read her stories to help her fall asleep." Arthur felt his eyes fill with tears again. He had forgotten those memories, burying them along with the memories of his wife. "What happened to me, Caleb?" he asked, more to himself than to the young man. "How did I become someone my own daughter fears?" "You lost your wife and were afraid of losing someone else," Caleb replied gently. "So you pulled away from Brooke before something could take her from you, too. The problem is that by pulling away, you ended up losing her anyway." The veterinarian's simple yet accurate observation hit Arthur square in the chest. That was exactly what had happened. In trying to protect his heart from more pain, he had caused precisely the pain he had been trying to avoid. "Caleb, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "When you asked Brooke to marry you, she said no because of me. Didn't that hurt? Didn't it make you question whether she truly loved you?" Caleb sighed, looking once more in Brooke's direction. "It hurt, yes, a lot. But it also made me understand how much she loves you, Mr. Harrison. A woman doesn't refuse to marry the man she loves because of someone who doesn't care about her. She refuses because she cares too much about that person. Does she really still love me? After everything I've done? You're her father. Of course she loves you. But love isn't enough if it isn't accompanied by respect and trust. And those two things you're going to have to earn back. Arthur nodded, knowing Caleb was right. Do you think it's possible to earn her trust back? I think it will depend entirely on you, on your actions from here on out. Brooke is a strong woman, but she's also a daughter who always dreamed of having her father back. And you? Arthur asked. Would you give me a chance to try to be a decent father-in-law? Caleb genuinely smiled for the first time since he had arrived. Mr. Harrison, if you can make Brooke happy again, I'll consider you family, no matter how many zeros are in your bank account. The simplicity and honesty of the answer touched Arthur deeply. Thank you, Caleb, for everything, for taking care of her when I wasn't there, for loving her the way she deserves, for giving me a chance to try to make things right. Don't thank me yet, Caleb warned. It's going to be a long and difficult road. Brooke is just as stubborn as her father. Arthur laughed, despite everything. She definitely got that from me. And it won't be easy for you either. Earning someone's trust means changing who you are. It means putting your relationship with her above business. It means accepting her choices even when you don't agree. I know, Arthur said seriously, and I'm willing to do it. For the first time in 5 years, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. A shout from Mrs. Martha made them turn around. Brooke had fainted next to the pickup truck. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot who are just starting out. Now, continuing, Arthur and Caleb ran toward her. Caleb got there first, kneeling beside Brooke and checking her vital signs. What happened? Arthur asked desperately. She was talking and suddenly stopped mid-sentence, Mrs. Martha explained, visibly worried. She went pale and collapsed. Caleb gently lifted Brooke's eyelids, checking her pupils. It's probably exhaustion combined with the emotional and physical trauma of the past few days. She hasn't been eating or sleeping properly. Brooke began to regain consciousness, murmuring incoherently. Arthur knelt on the other side of her, taking her hand. Brooke, sweetheart, can you hear me? She opened her eyes slowly, focusing first on Caleb, then on Arthur. Dad? What happened? You fainted, Caleb explained gently. When was the last time you ate something? Brooke tried to remember, but her confused expression revealed that even she didn't know. I don't remember. I think yesterday morning. Brooke, Mrs. Martha scolded. You can't neglect yourself like that. Caleb helped Brooke sit up against the pickup truck. Brooke, you need to see a doctor. After losing the baby, your body is still recovering. Add the trauma of the fire, the lack of sleep and food. I'm fine, she protested weakly. You're not fine, Arthur said firmly. Caleb is right. You need to see a doctor right now. I'll take her to the health clinic, Caleb decided. No, Arthur interrupted. I'm taking her to the private hospital in New York City. She needs specialized care. Dad, I said I don't want your help. Brooke, Arthur said, his voice thick with emotion. You can hate me as much as you want afterward. You can shut me out of your life again. But right now, at this moment, you're going to let your father take care of you. There was something in his tone that made Brooke stop protesting. Caleb and Arthur helped her into Arthur's car, a luxurious sedan that contrasted with the simplicity of Caleb's pickup truck. I'm coming with you, Caleb said. Of course, Arthur replied without hesitation. Martha, can you take care of the animals for a few hours? I can. Go now, this girl needs proper medical care. During the hour-long drive to the hospital, Arthur watched Brooke through the rearview mirror. She had fallen asleep leaning against Caleb's shoulder, who held her protectively. Caleb, Arthur said in a low voice, about the wedding, do you still want to marry her? More than ever, Caleb replied without hesitation. Why? Because when she recovers, when things settle down, I'd like to give my blessing officially. Caleb looked at Arthur in surprise. Even knowing I'm just a small-town veterinarian? Especially knowing that you have something I lost a long time ago, the ability to put the people you love first. Caleb smiled. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. That means a lot to me, and it will mean everything to her. At the hospital, Arthur used all his connections to make sure Brooke was seen immediately by the best doctors. While she underwent tests, he and Caleb waited in the VIP lounge. Mr. Harrison, Caleb said, can I tell you something about Brooke that you might not know? Of course. She keeps a photo of you and her as a child on her bedside table. It's of the two of you building that treehouse. She looks at that photo every night before going to sleep. Arthur felt his chest tighten. How do you know that? Because I sleep over sometimes. Not in an official way. We're discreet because of the neighbors. But she's never hidden from me how much she misses you. Then why did she pull away so much? Why didn't she try to reconcile with me? Because she did try, Mr. Harrison, many times. But every time she called, your secretary said you were busy. Every time she went to your office, she was stopped at the reception. She sent letters that were never answered. Arthur felt as if he had been punched. What letters? I never received any letters from her. She sent a letter every month during the first year after the fight, telling you about the progress at the ranch, about how she was feeling, asking to talk. When she stopped getting responses, she assumed you didn't want anything to do with her. My God, Arthur murmured. My secretary. She must have intercepted the letters, thinking she was protecting me from distractions. Or maybe you gave orders not to be bothered with personal matters, Arthur tried to remember. In the first few months after the fight with Brooke, he had indeed asked not to be bothered with family matters while he tried to focus on business. It was possible that his secretary had interpreted that as an order to filter out any communication from Brooke. Caleb, I need to know, what did those letters say? She kept copies of all of them. Maybe one day she'll let you read them, but I can tell you they were letters from a desperate daughter trying to reconnect with her father. Before Arthur could respond, the doctor approached. Family of Mrs. Brooke Harrison? Yes, Arthur and Caleb answered simultaneously. She's stable, but she needs care. The combination of physical and emotional stress, poor nutrition, and lack of sleep has resulted in a state of severe exhaustion. On top of that, her body is still recovering from the recent pregnancy loss. What does that mean? Arthur asked. It means she needs absolute rest for at least a week, regular meals, adequate sleep, and above all, avoiding stressful situations. Caleb and Arthur exchanged glances. Avoiding stress meant avoiding further confrontations about the past. Doctor, Caleb asked, is she well enough to travel? Her house was destroyed in a fire. Short distances, yes, but she needs a calm environment and people who can properly care for her. She can stay at my house, Arthur offered immediately. I have staff, a private doctor, everything she needs. Dad, no, Brooke said weakly from the gurney where she was being transferred back out of the exam room. Brooke, you heard the doctor. You need care and rest. My house has all of that. I'd rather stay with Mrs. Martha. Mrs. Martha's house is small and simple, Caleb interjected gently. Brooke, maybe accepting your father's offer is the wisest choice right now. You want me to go to his house? She asked, surprised. I want you to go wherever you'll get the best possible care. If that means your father's house, then yes. Arthur felt a wave of gratitude toward Caleb. The young man was putting Brooke's well-being above any personal discomfort. What about you? Brooke asked Caleb. Will you stay there too? Arthur answered before Caleb could speak. Of course he will. Caleb is welcome in my home for as long as you both need. Caleb seemed surprised but grateful. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Don't thank me. It's the least I can do. An hour later, they were on their way to Arthur's mansion in New York City. Brooke was asleep in the back seat, and Caleb watched the cityscape through the window. Caleb, Arthur said, have you ever been in a house like mine? No, sir. The biggest house I've ever been in was the mayor's in town when I vaccinated his horses. Arthur smiled slightly. It's going to be quite a change for you, but don't feel intimidated. It's just a big house. I'm more worried about how Brooke will react. She doesn't like ostentation. I know. It's one of the things she inherited from her mother. Evelyn always said that a person's worth wasn't measured by the size of their house. They arrived at the estate as the sun began to set. The Harrison mansion was imposing, with well-kept gardens and a classic facade that impressed any visitor. Caleb got out of the car in silence, clearly impressed but trying not to show it. Arthur gently woke Brooke. "We're here, sweetheart." Brooke opened her eyes and looked at the house where she had grown up. A mixture of emotions crossed her face. Nostalgia, sadness, reluctance. "It's been so long since I've been here," she murmured. 5 years, 2 months and 16 days, Arthur said automatically. She looked at him, surprised. "You keep count?" "Every day." The simple, honest answer seemed to break through some of her resistance. Arthur helped her out of the car, while Caleb picked up the small bag with the few things Mrs. Martha had packed. The mansion's housekeeper, Mrs. Pearl, appeared at the front door. She was a 50-year-old woman who had worked for Arthur for a decade, ever since Mrs. Martha had chosen to accompany Brooke to the countryside. "Miss Brooke," Mrs. Pearl exclaimed, rushing over to hug her. "I've missed you so much. When Mr. Arthur called saying you were coming to stay for a few days, I could hardly believe it." "Hi, Mrs. Pearl," Brooke replied, allowing herself to be hugged. "This is a temporary situation. Of course, dear. Your room is exactly as you left it. I didn't let anyone touch a thing." Arthur looked gratefully at Mrs. Pearl. He had indeed given orders for Brooke's room to remain untouched, in a secret hope that she would one day return. "And this must be Caleb," Mrs. Pearl said, extending her hand politely. "Mr. Arthur told me about you over the phone." Caleb shook her hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Pearl. I've prepared the guest room on the 2nd floor for you. It's on the same hallway as Miss Brooke's room." Arthur noticed how Mrs. Pearl had automatically assumed that Caleb and Brooke would want to be close, while still maintaining propriety. It was exactly the kind of sensitivity he had lost over the years. As they climbed the stairs, Brooke leaned heavily on the railing. The medication the doctor had given her was taking effect, making her drowsy. "Brooke, do you want to eat something before bed?" Caleb asked. "I'm not hungry." "The doctor said you need to eat regularly," Arthur reminded her. "Mrs. Pearl made that vegetable soup you always used to like," the housekeeper suggested. "Very light and nutritious," Brooke sighed. "Fine, but after that, I'm going to sleep." They headed to Brooke's room. Arthur hesitated at the door, unsure whether he should go in. The space had been preserved exactly as she had left it. Dozens of books on agriculture, photographs of the ranch, trophies from rural competitions from her teenage years. "You can come in, Dad," Brooke said, noticing his hesitation. Arthur stepped inside and was immediately struck by memories. How many nights had he spent in that room reading stories to Brooke when she was little? How many important conversations had taken place in that space? Caleb also looked around curiously, clearly trying to better understand the woman he loved through the objects she had left behind. "You really didn't change a thing," Brooke commented, touching a photograph of her and her mother riding horses. "I always hoped you'd come back." She sat on the bed, looking exhausted. "Caleb, are you sure you want to stay here? It might feel strange for you." "I'll stay wherever you are," he answered simply. Mrs. Pearl appeared at the door with a tray. "The soup, as promised, and chamomile tea to help you relax." "Thank you, Mrs. Pearl." Arthur watched as Caleb sat on the edge of the bed and gently encouraged Brooke to eat. There was a tender intimacy between them that made him feel both envy and admiration. "I'll let you two rest," Arthur said, heading for the door. "Dad," Brooke called out. "Thank you for taking me to the doctor, for everything today." "You don't have to thank me, sweetheart. It's my duty to take care of you." He left the room and walked through the mansion's hallways, feeling as though he was seeing everything with fresh eyes. The home that had once been full of life and love now seemed empty and cold, merely a monument to his loneliness. In his study, Arthur poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat down in the leather armchair that had been his refuge over the past few years. For the first time in a long while, he questioned whether all the financial success he had achieved at the expense of his family had been worth it. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. Caleb entered, looking hesitant. Sorry to bother you, Mr. Harrison. Brooke is asleep and I'd like to talk to you if that's all right. Of course. Care for a drink? Arthur offered. No, thank you. I don't drink. Why? Trouble with alcohol? No. I just never liked the effect it has on people. My father drank too much and, let's just say they weren't good memories. Arthur nodded, respecting the young man's honesty. What do you want to talk about? Caleb sat down in the chair across from the desk. About Brooke. About the future. About how we can help her recover not just physically but emotionally. I'm listening. Mr. Harrison, I've known your daughter for 2 years. She's strong, determined, but also deeply wounded by her relationship with you. What happened today, finding out that you were indirectly responsible for the fire, it's going to take time for her to process and forgive. You think she can forgive me? Caleb thought for a moment. I think she wants to forgive you. But forgiveness isn't something that happens overnight, especially when there are years of built-up pain. What do you suggest I do? First, give her space to process everything. Second, when she's ready to talk, be completely honest about your mistakes and your motivations. Third, show through actions that you've truly changed. What kind of actions? Caleb leaned forward. Brooke has always dreamed of rebuilding the ranch in a way that honors her mother's memory. She wanted to create something sustainable, something that would help the local community, something that would be a model of responsible farming. And maybe that's how you can show her you believe in her. Not by offering money or ready-made solutions, but by asking how you can support her dreams. Arthur considered Caleb's words. You think she'd let me help rebuild the ranch? I think she would, if you approached it the right way. Not as the know-it-all multi-billionaire businessman, but as the father who wants to support his daughter's dreams. And you? How do you feel about all this? Caleb smiled slightly. Honestly, I'm nervous. I've never been in a house like this, never dealt with people from your world, but I love Brooke more than my own fear of not being good enough. Caleb, can I tell you something? You've already proven you're good enough. You proved it the moment you put Brooke's well-being above your own comfort. That's something that took me years to learn. You're being very kind. I'm being honest, and I want you to know that when you two decide to get married, it will be an honor to have you as part of the family. Caleb seemed moved. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. That means more than you know. They talked for another hour about Brooke, about plans for the future, about how to rebuild not just the ranch, but the burned bridges between father and daughter. When Caleb finally went upstairs to sleep, Arthur felt more hopeful than he had in years. The next morning, Arthur woke up early and went to check on how Brooke was doing. He found Caleb in the kitchen, talking with Mrs. Pearl about the diet the doctor had recommended. How did she sleep? Arthur asked. Better, Caleb replied. She slept almost 12 hours. Her body really needed the rest. And how did you sleep? Was the room comfortable? Caleb smiled. Mr. Harrison, that was the most comfortable bed I've ever slept in my life. Thank you for your hospitality. Brooke came down for breakfast an hour later, looking noticeably better. Her color had returned and she no longer seemed on the verge of fainting. Good morning, she greeted, sitting down at the table. Good morning, sweetheart. How are you feeling? Better. Still tired, but better. Mrs. Pearl served a full breakfast. Fresh fruit, breads, eggs, natural juices. Arthur watched with satisfaction as Brooke ate with an appetite for the first time in days. Brooke, he said after she finished eating, can we talk? There are some things I need to tell you. She hesitated, looking at Caleb, who nodded encouragingly. All right, but not here. Let's go to the garden. The mansion's garden was Evelyn's favorite place when she was alive. She had planted rose bushes, jasmine, and all the flowers Brooke had loved as a child. Arthur didn't usually frequent the space since his wife passed, but he knew it would be the right setting for the conversation they needed to have. They sat on the wooden bench by the man-made pond. Caleb followed at a respectful distance, clearly wanting to give them privacy, but remaining available if Brooke needed support. Dad, Brooke began, before you speak, I need to say something. Of course. I spent the night thinking about everything that happened yesterday, about the fire, about Sterling Electric Co., about everything. And I realized something. Arthur waited, nervous. I realized that even with all the anger I feel, even with all the pain, I still love you. And that confuses me and hurts me at the same time. Her words hit Arthur like a wave of relief and guilt mixed together. Brooke. Let me finish, she interrupted. I love you because you're my father. But I don't trust you, and without trust, Dad, there's no relationship possible. Arthur nodded, understanding the gravity of what she was saying. You're right. I broke your trust in every possible way. Then tell me, why should I believe this time will be different? Why should I believe you've truly changed and aren't just feeling guilty because of the fire? It was the question Arthur knew was coming, and he had spent the night trying to formulate an honest answer. Because for the first time in 5 years I understood what I really lost. It wasn't just your presence in my life, Brooke. It was the chance to be your father. It was the opportunity to support your dreams. It was the privilege of knowing the man you chose to love. It was... His voice faltered. It was the chance to meet my grandson. Brooke closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. Dad, I know words aren't enough. I know empty promises won't fix the years we lost. But Brooke, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. And if it takes years, if it means proving myself every single day, I'll do it. And how do you intend to prove that? Arthur took a deep breath. First, I'm going to fix the mistakes I made. I'm going to take full responsibility for the damages at Sterling Electric Co.'s morning, and I'm going to make sure they properly compensate everyone for their losses. I don't want charity, Dad. It's not charity, it's responsibility. Second, I'm going to give you back all the letters you wrote me. Caleb told me about them. Apparently my secretary intercepted them following orders I gave that were misinterpreted. Brooke turned to him, surprised. You didn't read my letters? No. And that's something I'll carry for the rest of my life. A daughter trying to reconnect with her father, and the father being too proud to notice. I thought you had read them and chosen to ignore me. That hurt so much more than if you had simply told me not to write anymore. Can I read them now? All of them? Brooke thought for a moment. Yes, but after you read them, we're going to have a very long conversation about each one of them. Agreed. And third? You said first and second. What else do you intend to do? Arthur looked toward Caleb, who remained respectfully at a distance. Third, I want to help you rebuild the ranch, but not my way. Your way. I want to learn about sustainable agriculture. I want to understand your dreams and how I can support them without controlling them. Dad, the ranch was my independence, my way of proving I could succeed without your help. And you proved it, Brooke. In the last 5 years, you turned that property into something extraordinary. Now, if you'll let me, I'd like to learn from you instead of trying to teach you. The shift in perspective clearly touched Brooke. For the first time since the fire, Arthur saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. You really want to learn about sustainable agriculture? I want to learn about anything that's important to you. And Caleb, how do you really feel about him? Arthur looked once more at the young veterinarian. Honestly, I envy him. He managed to be for you what I should have been, someone who supports you unconditionally, someone who believes in your dreams, someone who puts you first. He proposed to me, Dad. I know. And you said no because of me. Yes. Then let me fix that too. Arthur stood up and walked toward Caleb. Caleb, could you come here, please? The young man approached, clearly nervous about what might happen. Caleb, Arthur said, his voice formal but warm, you have my blessing to marry my daughter. More than that, you have my gratitude for loving her the way she deserves to be loved. Caleb was speechless for a moment. Mr. Harrison. Thank you. This means everything to me. And to me too, Brooke said, standing up and walking over to them. Dad, are you really okay with this? Okay. With Caleb not having money? Not being from your world? Brooke, money never made anyone happy. Believe me, I know that better than anyone. Caleb has something far more valuable. He has character, and he genuinely loves you. Caleb took Brooke's hand. Brooke, now that I have your father's blessing, will you marry me? Brooke looked between the two most important men in her life. Caleb Foster, I accept your proposal. The simple proposal and the even simpler answer made Arthur realize how much he had unnecessarily complicated life with material and superficial matters. Sometimes the most important things were also the simplest. Caleb kissed Brooke softly, and Arthur stepped away to give the couple privacy. For the first time in years, he felt truly at peace. In the days that followed, a new routine settled into the mansion. Brooke recovered physically while she and Arthur began the slow process of rebuilding their relationship. Caleb naturally integrated into the family dynamic, winning over not only Arthur, but also Mrs. Pearl and the entire house staff with his simplicity and kindness. One morning, while having coffee in the garden, Brooke brought out an old box. Dad, these are all the letters I wrote to you, the copies I kept. Arthur looked at the box with reverence, as if it were a treasure. May I read them now? You may, but I'm going to stay here while you read. I want to see your reactions. The first letter was dated just 1 week after the argument that had torn them apart. Dear Dad, I know we left home angry, but I hope that once the dust settles, we can talk again. I don't want a disagreement about business to destroy our family. Mom always said family is more important than anything, and I believe that. The first days at the ranch were hard, but I'm determined to prove I can make this work. Not to defy you, but to honor the values you and Mom taught me about hard work and perseverance. I love you, Dad, even when we're fighting. Your daughter, Brooke. Arthur felt his eyes fill with tears as he read his daughter's loving and conciliatory words. How blind had he been to miss this attempt at peace? Keep reading, Brooke said softly. The second letter dated a month later. Dad, since you didn't answer my first letter, I imagine you're still upset. But I want to keep telling you about my life, because you're my father and you'll always matter to me. I got my first organic harvest. It was only 2 acres of corn, but the result was better than I expected. Mrs. Martha said you would be proud if you saw it. Would you really be? I met a very kind veterinarian who's been helping me with the animals. His name is Caleb. I'm sure you'd like him if you met him. He reminds me of you when you were younger and less consumed by business. I still love you and miss you. Brooke. Arthur realized this was the first mention of Caleb in the letters. Even then, Brooke had expressed her wish that he meet the man who was becoming important to her. The third letter, 3 months later. Dad, today I completed 6 months at the ranch. Some days are hard and lonely, especially when I wish I had someone to share my victories and failures with. Mrs. Martha is wonderful, but it's not the same as having family nearby. Caleb and I are growing closer. He's everything I ever dreamed of finding in a partner. Kind, hard-working, honest. But I can't help thinking about what it would be like to introduce him to you and know that you would approve. Sometimes I dream that you show up at the ranch unannounced and see all the progress I've made. In the dream, you hug me and say you're proud. It would be wonderful if that were true. Forever your daughter, Brooke. Brooke, Arthur interrupted the reading. Why did you never tell me about those dreams when we were closer? Because when we were close, I was a child and assumed you would always be there. I only started having those dreams after we drifted apart. Arthur kept reading. Each letter was a window into his daughter's soul, showing her struggles, her victories, her fears, and, most painfully, her constant hope that her father would once again be part of her life. The 12th letter, written a year after the fight, was particularly hard to read. Dad, I think this will be my last letter. I've written 11 times without receiving any response, and I need to accept that maybe you've moved on without me. Caleb asked me to officially be his girlfriend yesterday. I said yes, but I couldn't help crying because my father wasn't there to meet the man I chose to love. The ranch is thriving. I won my first regional award for sustainable agriculture. It was a moment of joy mixed with sadness because the first person I wanted to tell the news was you. If you ever change your mind about us, Know that there will always be room for you in my life. No matter how much time passes, no matter what happens, you will always be my father and I will always love you. Maybe one day our paths will cross again. With eternal love. Brooke. Arthur was openly crying now. Brooke, how could you forgive me after I ignored something so beautiful? Because true love doesn't give up easily, Dad. And because deep down I always knew you weren't ignoring me out of spite, but out of pain. But I caused you so much pain too. You did, yes. But shared pain is pain diminished. And now we're sharing it. Caleb, who had been watching the emotionally charged exchange in silence, stepped forward. Mr. Harrison, may I say something? Of course, Caleb. Brooke showed me those letters a few months ago, when our relationship was getting more serious. I read them and told her that any man who had a daughter capable of loving so unconditionally had to be, deep down, a good person. That gave me hope that one day you two would reconcile. You always believed that could happen? Arthur asked. Always. True love doesn't disappear, it just stays hidden sometimes. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. That helps us a lot since we're just starting out. Now continuing. Arthur spent the rest of the morning reading all the letters. Each one revealed a different aspect of Brooke's emotional journey, her growing maturity, and her persistent hope for family reconciliation. When he finished, he carefully placed all the letters back in the box. Brooke, these letters are the greatest treasure I've ever possessed. They show the extraordinary woman you've become despite my absence. Dad, do you really want to start rebuilding our relationship? More than anything in the world. Then let's start small. Tell me about your life over the past 5 years. Not about business, but about you. How you felt. What you missed, what made you happy or sad. It was a question no one had asked Arthur in years. In the business world, no one cared about his feelings, only his results. Well, he began hesitantly, in the first few months after our fight, I threw myself into work like never before. I thought that if I could build an even bigger empire, somehow that would prove I was right about everything. And did it? Brooke asked. No, it proved exactly the opposite. The more money I made, the emptier I felt. The more companies I bought, the more alone I became. What did you miss the most? Arthur thought for a moment. Our conversations at breakfast. You always had something interesting to share, some new plan, some crazy idea. The house got very quiet without you. And what made you happy in those 5 years? Honestly, almost nothing. Maybe a few momentary professional achievements, but nothing lasting. What made me happiest was yesterday, seeing you and Caleb take care of each other. Caleb smiled. Mr. Harrison, can I tell you something about Brooke that will make you proud? Of course. She never spoke badly about you. Even in her most hurt moments, when she cried from missing you, she always said you were a good man who was lost in his grief. It's true, Brooke confirmed. Even when I was angriest with you, I never stopped believing that deep down you were still the father who taught me to ride a bike. The image touched Arthur deeply. I still remember that day. You were 5 years old and determined to learn without training wheels. You fell at least 10 times, but you didn't give up. You ran behind me all day holding the bike until I gathered the courage to let you let go. And when I finally let go, you pedaled on your own for the first time. The smile on your face. That was one of the happiest moments of my life. Why did we stop having moments like that, Dad? Arthur sighed. Because when your mother left, I was afraid of getting too attached to you and then losing you too. So I distanced myself, thinking that would protect me from the pain. I didn't realize that by doing that, I was guaranteeing exactly the loss I was trying to avoid. Dad, you could never completely lose me. I'm your daughter. That will never change. Even after everything I've done. Especially after everything you've done. Because now you understand the value of what we had. And I understand the value of forgiveness. Caleb stood up. You two need some time alone. I'll go help Mrs. Pearl with some things in the kitchen. After Caleb walked away, Arthur and Brooke sat in silence for a few moments, just appreciating the closeness they hadn't had in years. Brooke, Arthur finally said, Do you still want to rebuild the ranch? More than ever. But now I have a different idea. What? Instead of just rebuilding what was there before, how about we create something new? Something that's ours, not just mine. What do you mean? A model ranch that combines your business expertise with my knowledge of sustainable agriculture. A place that's productive and profitable, but also environmentally responsible and socially conscious. Arthur felt a wave of excitement. That would be incredible, Brooke. We could create jobs for the local community, implement sustainable technologies, maybe even develop an educational program for other ranchers. Exactly, and Caleb could lead the veterinary and animal care side of things. It would truly be a family project. The word family made Arthur smile genuinely for the first time in years. Then let's do it. Together. There's one condition, Dad. What? This time you listen to me when I share ideas. No more, that won't work, or it's too risky, before actually considering the proposal. Arthur laughed. Deal. And do you promise to listen to me when I bring up business perspectives that could help make the projects more viable? Deal. They shook hands as partners, but the hug that followed was father and daughter. In the following weeks, Arthur temporarily moved his offices to a town near the destroyed ranch, so he could closely follow the reconstruction plans. Brooke and Caleb stayed at the mansion for just a few more days, until Brooke fully recovered. Then they returned to the rural area. Arthur rented a simple house in the small town in Montana, surprising the local residents. The famous multi-billionaire was living like an ordinary person, shopping at the local market, greeting neighbors, adapting to country life. The first official planning meeting for the new ranch took place at the house Arthur had rented. In addition to him, Brooke and Caleb, Mrs. Martha also attended, along with some neighboring ranchers and sustainable agriculture specialists Brooke had invited. Well, Arthur began, clearly nervous about being in unfamiliar territory. This is the first time I'm part of a project where I'm not the sole decision-maker, so please bear with me while I learn. Brooke smiled, proud of her father's humility. Dad, why don't you share your overall vision of the project with everyone? Actually, Arthur said, I'd prefer for Brooke to share it. After all, this is the realization of her dream. I'm just the enthusiastic investor. The meeting lasted 5 hours. Arthur was impressed by Brooke's level of technical knowledge and the practical contributions from the local ranchers. Caleb presented a comprehensive veterinary plan that showcased his expertise in the field. Mr. Arthur, said Silas, the neighbor who had taken in Brooke's animals after the fire, may I ask a personal question? Of course, Silas. Why did you decide to move here? A man in your position could oversee everything from a distance. Arthur looked at Brooke before answering. Because for 5 years I oversaw my life from a distance and that didn't work. This time, I want to be present for every important moment. What about your company, your other businesses? Asked one of the specialists. I have excellent managers who can handle the day-to-day operations, and these days, with technology, I can keep up with everything remotely when needed. But nothing is more important than rebuilding my relationship with my daughter and supporting this project. After the meeting, while Brooke and Caleb organized the paperwork, Mrs. Martha approached Arthur. Mr. Arthur, may I speak with you? Of course, Martha. Mrs. Evelyn would be so proud to see you like this. Present, humble, supporting Brooke's dreams instead of trying to control them. The mention of his wife was still painful, but now in a different way. Do you think she would forgive me for those 5 lost years? Mr. Arthur, Mrs. Evelyn loved you deeply. She understood that pain sometimes makes good people make bad decisions, but she also knew that true love always finds its way back. I miss her so much, Martha, especially now, when I'm trying to be a better father. She always knew the right words to say. Then let me give you the advice Mrs. Evelyn would give. Stop punishing yourself for the past and focus on building a better future. Brooke needs a father who's present, not a father who's full of regret. The simple yet profound advice resonated with Arthur. In the following weeks, he focused on being the father Brooke needed now, instead of punishing himself for the father he hadn't been before. The rebuilding of the ranch became a community event. Neighbors offered help, Local suppliers gave discounts, and even young people from the small town in Montana volunteered to help on weekends. Arthur was moved to see how respected and loved Brooke was by the community. She had become a natural leader, someone people sought out for advice and support. "Dad," Brooke said one afternoon, as they watched the workers laying the foundation of the new main house, "thank you for not trying to speed up this process with more money and labor." "Why do you say that?" "Because this slow construction is allowing the community to get involved. It's creating bonds and relationships that will last long after the work is done." Arthur nodded, understanding yet another lesson about value that couldn't be measured in money. "You're far wiser than I am, Brooke." "I'm not wiser. I just have different priorities. Can I ask you something? How did you and Caleb decide about the wedding? Are you going to wait until the ranch is finished?" Brooke smiled. "Actually, we want to get married right here, in the middle of the construction. We want our marriage to be part of the rebuilding, literally and symbolically." "And when would that be?" "In 2 months. Very simple, just family and close friends. Nothing extravagant." "Brooke, are you sure I can pay for a beautiful celebration with every detail you could want?" "Dad," she interrupted gently, "you still haven't fully understood, have you? It's not about what you can afford. It's about what means something to us." Arthur paused and really thought about what she was saying. For years, his way of showing love had been through expensive gifts and extravagant gestures. But Brooke was teaching him that true love was in the small, everyday actions, in presence, in attention. "You're right. I'm sorry. What do you need for the wedding you want?" "Your blessing, your presence, and maybe you could walk me down the aisle." "It would be the greatest honor of my life," Arthur answered, getting emotional again. That night, Caleb sought Arthur out for a private conversation. They walked across the ranch grounds, watching the progress of the construction under the moonlight. "Mr. Harrison, can I tell you something Brooke doesn't know?" "Of course, Caleb, what is it about?" "When I proposed to her for the first time 3 months ago, I had planned everything. I had saved for a year to buy a simple but beautiful ring. I had chosen the perfect spot on the ranch near the sunflower field she loved. What happened? At the last moment, she started crying and said she couldn't imagine getting married without her father there. She said it would be like a party without music, technically possible but soulless." Arthur felt his heart tighten. "Caleb, I'm so sorry. My pride cost you and her a moment that should have been pure and happy. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because I want you to understand how much you mean to her. Even after 5 years of distance, her love for you never faded." "And now? How do you feel about the wedding happening in the middle of a construction site?" Caleb laughed. "Honestly, I think it's perfect. Because our life together is going to be exactly that. Building something beautiful in the middle of the mess, creating order out of chaos, finding beauty where others only see work. You love her very much, don't you?" "I love everything about her. Her determination, her kindness, her ability to forgive. And I love how she talks about you even in the hard times." "How does she talk about me?" "The way a daughter talks about a hero who lost his way for a while, but who deep down is still a hero." The description touched Arthur deeply. "Caleb, can I ask you a favor?" "Of course." "After you two get married, promise me you'll never let work or anything else become more important than her. Promise me you'll be there for all the important moments of your lives together." "I promise, sir. I learned a lot by watching your mistakes and your successes. I won't repeat the mistakes." "And the successes? What were my successes?" Caleb smiled. "You raised an extraordinary woman. Even with all the problems, Brooke became strong, independent, compassionate, and full of dreams. That doesn't happen by accident. That comes from a solid foundation that you and Mrs. Evelyn gave her when she was a child." "Thank you for saying that, Caleb. Sometimes it's hard to see that I did anything right." "Mr. Arthur, can I suggest something?" "Of course. How about writing a letter to Brooke, telling her everything you've felt these 5 years, everything you've learned, all the regrets and hopes, and give it to her on the wedding day?" "You think she'd like that?" "I'm sure of it. She kept copies of every letter she wrote to you. I think she'd love to have a letter from you to keep as well." Arthur spent the next 2 weeks writing the letter. It wasn't easy putting 5 years of regret, pain, and finally renewed hope into words. He rewrote it several times, wanting every word to express exactly what he felt. Meanwhile, the wedding preparations continued in a simple but heartfelt way. Mrs. Martha coordinated the decorations with flowers picked from the neighboring fields. Mrs. Pearl had insisted on preparing a special dinner for the celebration. The neighbors contributed with music, drinks, and other necessities. Arthur was touched to see how the community had embraced Brooke and Caleb as family. They weren't just the couple getting married. They were valued members of a network of mutual support. 1 week before the wedding, Brooke found Arthur sitting alone on the porch of the house he had rented, gazing at the stars. "Dad, can I sit with you?" "Of course, sweetheart. Can't sleep." "I'm nervous about the wedding. Not about Caleb, but about everything else." "What do you mean?" "It's that it's going to be official, you know. I'm going to stop being just Brooke Harrison and become Brooke Foster. I'm going to have a new family, new responsibilities. And a part of me is afraid that this will change the relationship we just got back." Arthur took his daughter's hand. "Brooke, marriage doesn't diminish family love. It increases it. You're still going to be my daughter, no matter what last name you use, and Caleb is going to become the son I never had." "Do you really feel that way about him?" "Completely. Caleb taught me more about being a man of character in 2 months than I learned in years. I'm grateful every day that you chose someone so special. Dad, can I tell you a secret?" "Always." "During all those years we didn't talk, I always imagined my wedding with you walking me down the aisle. Even when I was angriest with you, I still dreamed about that moment. And I wasted 5 years when I could have been part of all the important moments that led to this day. But you're here now. And that's what matters." They remained silent for a few minutes, simply enjoying the tranquility of the countryside night and the emotional closeness they had rebuilt. "Dad," Brooke said finally, "are you happy? Truly happy? For the first time in a long while?" Arthur thought about the question. "You know, Brooke, for years I thought happiness was synonymous with professional success. The more money I made, the more companies I bought, the happier I should have been. But I never felt fulfilled. And now? Now I know the difference between satisfaction and happiness. Satisfaction is temporary. It comes from external achievements. Happiness is lasting. It comes from genuine relationships and knowing you're making a difference in the lives of the people you love. You are making a difference, Dad. In my life, in Caleb's life, in the life of this entire community with this ranch project. And you know what's most incredible? I'm having fun. For the first time in years, I wake up excited to start the day. Not because I'm going to make money, but because I'm going to work on a meaningful project alongside my daughter." Brooke stood up and kissed her father's forehead. "Good night, Dad. Sleep well. Good night, sweetheart. I love you." "I love you too." Arthur stayed on the porch for a few more minutes after Brooke went to sleep. He looked up at the stars and, for the first time since Evelyn had passed, felt truly at peace with himself. The wedding day dawned sunny and perfect. The ceremony would be held in the late afternoon at the spot where the main garden of the new ranch would one day stand. A simple altar had been set up with local wood and decorated with wildflowers. Arthur woke up early, nervous and emotional. He had barely slept, rereading the letter he had written to Brooke several times and wondering if he had properly expressed his feelings. Caleb appeared at his door at 8 in the morning, dressed casually but carrying a suit in his arms. "Good morning, Mr. Arthur. How did you sleep?" "Poorly," Arthur admitted. "And you?" "Even worse," Caleb laughed. "How about we have some coffee together before the madness of the day begins?" They sat in the small kitchen of the rented house, drinking strong coffee and eating the donuts Mrs. Pearl had sent over the day before. "Caleb, are you nervous?" "Very. And you?" "Me too. I think I'm more nervous about giving my daughter away than you are about receiving her." Caleb smiled. "Mr. Arthur, you're not giving her away. You're gaining a son, and she's gaining a husband, but she's not losing a father." "You always know the right words to say." "I learned from Brooke. She has a natural talent for making people feel valued." At 10 in the morning, the women whisked Brooke away for the final preparations. Mrs. Martha, Mrs. Pearl and some of the neighbors had taken complete control, making it clear that the men were not welcome until it was time for the ceremony. Arthur and Caleb spent the day helping with the final arrangements, setting up chairs, testing the sound system, making sure everything was perfect for the celebration. At 4 in the afternoon, the guests began to arrive. There weren't many people, maybe 50 in all, but every single one was special to the couple. Neighbors, friends from the community, some of Caleb's colleagues from veterinary school, and the longest-serving employees of the Harrison family. Arthur was surprised to see people arriving that he hadn't expected. Some local business owners who had become friends with Brooke through sustainable agriculture projects, professors from the college where she had studied, and even the doctor who had cared for her after the fire. "Dad!" Brooke appeared at the door of the house where she was getting ready, radiant in a simple but elegant dress. "Are you ready?" Arthur was speechless for a moment. His daughter was beautiful, but it wasn't just her physical beauty that struck him. It was genuine joy in her eyes, the confidence in her posture, the peace that radiated from her entire being. "Brooke, you are—" He stopped, emotional. "I am what, Dad?" "You are exactly as your mother was at our wedding. Not just beautiful, but radiant, happy in a way that comes from within." Brooke approached and straightened her father's tie. "And you are exactly as I remember the father of my childhood. Present, affectionate, proud. I am prouder of you than I have words to express." The music began to play, an instrumental version of a song Evelyn used to sing to Brooke when she was a child. Arthur offered his arm to his daughter. "Ready?" "More than ready. Let's go." The walk to the altar was emotional. Arthur could feel the emotion of the guests as father and daughter walked slowly between the chairs. Caleb waited at the altar, visibly moved with tears in his eyes as he saw his bride approach. When they reached the altar, the justice of the peace asked, "Who gives this woman in marriage?" Arthur answered with a firm voice, "I give her away, but I don't abandon her. As a father, I will always be here to support this union." He kissed Brooke's forehead and placed her hand in Caleb's. "Take good care of her, and let her take good care of you too." "I promise, sir," Caleb replied, shaking Arthur's hand before turning to Brooke. The ceremony was simple, but deeply touching. Caleb and Brooke had written their own vows, speaking not only of the love they felt for each other, but also of the family and community they had built around them. When the justice of the peace declared them husband and wife, the applause was warm and sincere. Arthur was crying openly, but they were tears of joy. During dinner, which took place at long tables set up outdoors, Arthur stood up to make a speech. "Friends, family," he began, his voice heavy with emotion. "Today is a day of celebration, but also of reflection. 6 months ago, I was a man successful in business, but a failure as a father. The raw honesty made the room grow more attentive. My daughter Brooke taught me that true successes are not measured in money, but in relationships. Caleb taught me that character is worth more than any fortune. And together, they taught me that it's never too late to change, to grow, to become a better person." He paused, looking at the newlywed couple. "Brooke and Caleb, thank you for giving me a second chance, for teaching me that family isn't about perfection, but about forgiveness and constant growth. May your life together be full of love, understanding, and above all, true presence for one another." The applause was long and emotional. Several people were crying, touched by the sincerity of the speech. After dinner, while the guests danced and talked, Arthur approached Brooke with an envelope in his hands. "Daughter, this is my wedding gift to you. It's not something you buy in a store." Brooke opened the envelope and found the letter Arthur had written. She read the first few lines and immediately became emotional. "Dad, can I read this later, in private?" "Of course. I wrote everything I wish I had said during those 5 years of silence." Brooke hugged her father for a long time. "Thank you for being here, for having changed, for being the father I always knew existed deep in your heart." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take the opportunity to leave a like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Later that night, After the guests had left and the newlyweds had retired to the small house Caleb had rented in town, Arthur found himself alone again on the porch, but this time feeling complete. Mrs. Martha approached, carrying 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might like some company," she said, sitting down beside him. "Thank you, Martha. It was a perfect day, wasn't it?" "It truly was. Mrs. Evelyn would have been so proud." "Do you think that she can see this from where she is?" Mrs. Martha smiled. "Mr. Arthur, I'm certain she was here today. In Brooke's smile, in Caleb's kindness, in the way you became a true father again. You know, Martha, for the first time since Evelyn passed, I don't feel guilty for being happy." "Why would you feel guilty?" "Because for a long time, I thought that if I were happy again, I'd be betraying her memory, as if joy were an insult to her absence. Mr. Arthur, Mrs. Evelyn loved you too much to want you to be unhappy forever. She wanted you to be a good father to Brooke, to find purpose in life, to connect with people who value you. And that's what I found. Purpose, connection, true family." "Exactly. And now you'll have grandchildren to spoil too." Arthur smiled at the thought. "Do you think I'll be a better grandfather than I was a father?" "I think you'll be an extraordinary grandfather, because now you understand what truly matters." They sat in silence for a few minutes, enjoying the tranquility of the evening and the sense of closure the day had brought. "Martha, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sir." "When I leave this life, I want you to know that these last few months have been the best of my existence. Not because of success or money, but because I finally learned to be a complete person." "Mr. Arthur, you're not going anywhere anytime soon. You have many decades of happiness ahead with your family." "I hope so. But if I ever do go, I want Brooke to know that she saved me, that she taught me the true meaning of life. She already knows that. I saw it in her eyes today. She knows she has back the father she always loved." 1 month after the wedding, the construction of the new ranch was nearly complete. The main house was modern yet welcoming, with large windows offering views of the fields and a design that prioritized functionality over ostentation. Arthur had permanently moved to the area, selling his mansion in New York City and buying a smaller property near Brooke's ranch. Not because she had asked, but because he genuinely preferred the simpler life in a small town in Montana. "Dad," Brooke said one morning while they inspected the installation of the solar panels that would provide clean energy for the ranch, "can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course, any time." "Do you miss your old life? The hustle of business, the important dinners, all that commotion?" Arthur thought about the question as he watched Caleb in the corral, tending to a cow that was about to give birth. "You know, Brooke, for years I confused motion with progress, busyness with importance. I thought that if I wasn't constantly occupied with meetings and important decisions, I wasn't living a meaningful life. And now? Now I realize that the most meaningful moments are the simplest ones, like this morning, working alongside my daughter on a project that will benefit dozens of families, like yesterday when Caleb taught me to diagnose animal health issues, like last week when I helped Mrs. Martha harvest tomatoes in her garden." Brooke smiled. "You've changed so much, Dad. Or maybe I've returned to who I was before I lost myself in grief and ambition. Your mother always said I was a better person when I had my feet in the earth, literally." She was right. The father who taught me to ride a horse and who built tree houses was far more interesting than the successful businessman you became afterward. And now? What kind of father am I now? Now you're both. You have business wisdom when we need it, but you also have the simplicity and presence that make you a real father. At that moment, Caleb shouted from the corral, "Arthur, Brooke, come see this." They ran toward the corral and found Caleb kneeling beside a cow that had just given birth to a healthy calf. "It's the first birth on the new ranch," Caleb said, beaming. "I thought you'd want to witness it." Arthur watched the calf trying to stand for the first time, staggering but determined. "That's a good sign, isn't it?" "The best of signs," Brooke confirmed. "New life, new beginnings." "What should we name him?" Arthur asked. Caleb and Brooke looked at each other and smiled. "Hope," they said simultaneously. Arthur felt his eyes fill with tears again. It seemed he had cried more in the last few months than in his entire life, but these were tears of joy, relief, and gratitude. Hope is the perfect name, he agreed. 6 months later, St. Evelyn Ranch 2.0, as they had affectionately nicknamed it, was fully operational. It produced high-quality organic food, offered educational programs for other rural producers, and had become a model of environmental sustainability in the region. More importantly, it had become a true family business. Arthur had applied his business expertise to create efficient and profitable systems. Brooke had contributed her technical knowledge and sustainable vision. Caleb had ensured the well-being of the animals and the sanitary quality of all products. But the ranch's true success wasn't measured in profits or recognition. It was measured in the unity of the Harrison foster family and the positive impact they were having on the local community. On a Sunday afternoon, while the family was having lunch on the porch of the new house, Brooke made an announcement that left everyone overjoyed. "Caleb and I have some news for you," she said, barely able to contain her excitement. Arthur stopped eating, his heart racing with the hope that it was what he was thinking. "I'm pregnant," Brooke announced, radiant. The silence lasted only a few seconds before Arthur stood up and embraced his daughter, crying with joy. "Oh my God, Brooke, when? How are you feeling? Is everything okay?" "Calm down, Dad," she laughed. "I'm 2 months along. Everything is perfect, and this time I'll be able to have my father by my side throughout the entire pregnancy." Caleb came over and hugged them both. "Mr. Arthur, how does it feel to be about to become a grandfather?" Arthur couldn't stop smiling. "I feel like my life finally makes complete sense. I'm going to be the best grandfather I can possibly be." "I know you will," Brooke said, "because you've learned that being present is worth more than anything money can buy." Mrs. Martha, who had witnessed the announcement, was wiping her eyes with her apron. "Mrs. Evelyn is celebrating up there, I'm sure of it." In the months that followed, Arthur dedicated himself to being the most prepared future grandfather possible. He read books on child development, helped set up the baby's room, and even started building a new treehouse for when the child grew up. "Dad," Brooke said one day, watching him work on the treehouse, "don't you think you're getting a little ahead of yourself? The baby isn't even born yet." "I know it's early," Arthur admitted, screwing in a board, "but I missed 5 important years of your life. I don't want to miss a single minute of my grandson's or granddaughter's life." "And what if it's a girl who doesn't like tree houses?" Arthur stopped working and smiled. "Then I'll teach her to do whatever it is she wants to do. The important thing is to be there to teach." Caleb appeared carrying more wood. "Can I help? I've always wanted to learn carpentry." "Of course," Arthur replied enthusiastically. "How about we start by making a small table for her to do crafts on when she grows up?" "She or he," Caleb corrected. "True, he or she. Either way, I'll love them just the same." As they worked together, Arthur reflected on how completely his life had changed. A year ago, he was a lonely, bitter man, measuring his worth only by the size of his bank account. Now, he was a father, father-in-law, and future grandfather, measuring his wealth by the quality of his relationships. "Caleb," he said while sanding a piece of wood, "thank you." "For what, Mr. Arthur?" "For loving my daughter when I wasn't there to do it, for taking care of her, for giving me a second chance to be part of this family." "Mr. Arthur, you don't need to thank me for loving Brooke. It's impossible not to love her. But I do need to thank you for teaching me what it means to be a real man. It's not about how many companies you own or how much money you have in the bank. It's about how you treat the people you love." Caleb smiled. "And you taught me that it's never too late to change, to grow, to become the person you want to be." They worked in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. "Caleb, can I confess something?" "Always." "I'm afraid of not being a good grandfather, of repeating the same mistakes I made as a father." Caleb stopped working and looked seriously at Arthur. "Mr. Arthur, the fact that you have that fear already proves you're going to be an excellent grandfather. People who worry about getting it right usually do it right. You think so?" "I'm sure of it. And besides, now you have something you didn't have when Brooke was little, the awareness of your past mistakes. That's a powerful tool for doing better. When the baby finally arrived, a beautiful little girl named Evelyn in honor of her grandmother, Arthur fell in love instantly. He was there at the hospital, waiting anxiously in the hallway, and was one of the first people to hold his granddaughter. "Hi, Evelyn," he murmured to the baby, who was sleeping peacefully in his arms. "I'm your grandfather. I promise to be here for you always. I promise to be better for you than I was for your mother at first." Brooke, exhausted but radiant in the hospital bed, watched the scene with tears in her eyes. "Dad, do you want to hold her?" "May I?" Arthur asked, as if asking permission to hold the greatest treasure in the world. "Of course you may. She's your granddaughter." Arthur held the baby with the care of someone handling fine crystal. "She's perfect, Brooke, absolutely perfect." "She has your eyes," Caleb observed. "She really does," Brooke agreed. "And I hope she has her father's kindness too." Arthur looked at his daughter, surprised. "Kindness? Dad, you've always been a good person. You just lost your way for a while. But deep down, you were always good. And now, Evelyn is going to know the better version of you." In the months following Evelyn's birth, Arthur dedicated himself to being the present grandfather he had promised to be. He took care of his granddaughter whenever Brooke needed to work at the ranch, made up lullabies, and documented every smile and every milestone of the child's development. "Dad," Brooke said one day, finding Arthur in the garden, playing with Evelyn in his arms, "you know she's still too little to understand the stories you tell her, right?" Arthur was narrating to the 4-month-old baby the story of how he had met her grandmother. "I know she doesn't understand now, but one day she will, and I want her to always know that she was deeply loved and wanted. And she is, by all of us." "Brooke, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Have you completely forgiven me? For the lost years, for the mistakes, for everything?" Brooke sat down on the grass next to her father and daughter. "Dad, forgiveness isn't something that happens once and it's over. It's a choice we make every day. And every day I choose to forgive because every day I see the incredible man you've become." "Thank you for this second chance, sweetheart. Thank you for seizing this second chance. Many people receive new opportunities but do nothing with them. You didn't just change. You became an even better version of who you always were." Arthur kissed the top of his granddaughter's head, then his daughter's. "You too saved me. You taught me that true wealth isn't counted in money, but in moments like this." 2 years later, Arthur was on the same porch where he had spoken with Brooke the night before her wedding, but now he wasn't alone. Evelyn, now a 2-year-old bursting with energy, played with building blocks at his feet. "Grandpa, look." She showed him a wobbly tower she had built. "That's beautiful, my princess. You're an architect just like your mommy." "What's an architect?" "It's someone who builds beautiful and useful things, like your mother built our new ranch." Caleb approached, returning from a day of work in the fields. "How are things around here, Dad?" Arthur smiled at the affectionate term Caleb used to refer to him. "Perfect. Evelyn and I built 3 towers, read 2 books, and planted flowers in the garden." "And we had ice cream," Evelyn added with typical childhood honesty. Caleb laughed. "Ice cream? Before dinner?" "Just a little bit," Arthur defended himself. "Grandfather's privilege." Brooke appeared in the doorway, her belly now slightly rounded. She was pregnant again. "How are my loves?" she asked, kissing Caleb and picking Evelyn up. "We're doing great," Arthur replied. "How was your doctor's appointment?" "Everything's perfect, and we have news. It's a boy." Arthur stood up immediately, beaming. "A boy, Evelyn? You're going to have a little brother." "Little brother." Evelyn clapped her hands, not fully understanding, but catching the joy of the adults. Caleb hugged Brooke. "What should we name him?" "I was thinking Arthur," Brooke said, looking at her father. "Arthur Harrison, in honor of the best father and grandfather in the world." Arthur was moved. "Brooke, are you sure?" "I'm absolutely sure. I want my son to carry the name of the man who taught me that it's never too late to change, to love, to be a better person." Arthur hugged his daughter, trying to express through the gesture all the gratitude he felt. That night, after Evelyn had gone to sleep and Brooke and Caleb had retired, Arthur stood on the porch looking at the stars, reflecting on his journey. 3 years ago, he was a broken man, rich in money but poor in relationships. Today, he was genuinely rich in every way that truly mattered. He had a daughter who loved and respected him, a son-in-law who had become a true son, a granddaughter who adored him, and another grandson on the way who would carry his name. Most importantly, he had peace with himself. He had learned the difference between success and meaning, between having and being, between existing and living. A movement in the garden caught his attention. Caleb walked toward the porch, carrying 2 beers. "I thought you might like some company," Caleb said, offering a beer to Arthur. "I always enjoy your company, son." They sat side by side, 2 men who had become family through their shared love for Brooke. "Caleb, can I tell you something?" "Of course, Dad." Today, when Brooke said she wants to give the baby my name, it was one of the most emotional moments of my life. Why? Because it means she hasn't just forgiven me. She's genuinely proud of me, that she considers my name worthy of being passed on to her child. Caleb smiled. "Mr. Harrison, do you have any idea of the impact you've had on Brooke's life? And on mine too?" "What do you mean, yours?" "Before I met you, I thought success was only about money and status. Seeing your transformation, I learned that true success is about character, relationships, and making a difference in the lives of the people we love. And you taught me that character is shown in small daily actions, not in grand declarations." They drank in silence for a few moments, each appreciating the other's company and the tranquility of the night. "Caleb, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "When I leave this life, promise me you'll tell Evelyn and little Arthur about how their grandfather changed. I want them to know that people can change, can grow, can become better." "I promise, but you still have many years ahead to tell those stories yourself." "I hope so. But if I don't, I want them to know that the last 3 years have been the best of my life, that I found purpose, true family, and genuine happiness. They'll know, and they'll be proud of the grandfather they had." 6 months later, Arthur held his newborn grandson in his arms. Little Arthur Foster had been born healthy and perfect, completing the family in a way the grandfather had never imagined possible. "Hi, little Arthur," he murmured to the baby. "You're going to carry my name, but I hope you'll also carry all the lessons I've learned. Be kind, be present, be the person who puts family above everything else." Brooke, resting in the hospital bed, watched the scene with a tired but happy smile. "Dad, do you want to be his official godfather?" "It would be an honor, sweetheart." Caleb approached and placed his hand on Arthur's shoulder. "Welcome to the family, Arthur Foster. You have the name of an extraordinary man." Arthur looked around, at his daughter, his son-in-law, his grandchildren, and felt completely fulfilled. He had found something that all the money in the world couldn't buy: a loving, united family. "Thank you," he said, addressing both those present and the memory of Evelyn, his wife. "Thank you for giving me a second chance to be the person I should have always been." 5 years later, the St. Evelyn Ranch had become not only a commercial success, but also a nationally recognized center for environmental education and sustainable agriculture. Arthur had become something of a local celebrity, known not for his wealth, but for his personal transformation and dedication to family and community. On a sunny afternoon, 3 generations of the Harrison Foster family worked together in the garden. Arthur, now with completely grey hair but still vigorous at 60, was teaching Evelyn, age 7, to plant sunflower seeds. Little Arthur, age 5, was helping his mother pick tomatoes, while Caleb tended to the medicinal herb garden. "Grandpa," Evelyn asked, "why do you love planting so much?" Arthur thought about the question as he helped his granddaughter cover the seeds with soil. "You know, Evelyn, planting is like life. You put a tiny little seed in the ground, you take care of it with love, and it turns into something beautiful and useful. Like how you took care of Mom." The innocent but profound question made Arthur stop and look at his granddaughter. "Yeah, in a way, yes. Sometimes it took me a while to understand how to care properly, but in the end, I learned." "And will you teach me to take care of my little plants?" I'll teach you everything I know, my princess, and you'll teach me things too. What can I teach you? Arthur smiled, remembering how children had that ability to ask questions that went straight to the heart of important matters. You teach me to live each day as if it was special, to get excited about simple things like watching a flower grow or a little bird building its nest. Evelyn nodded seriously, as if absorbing an important lesson. Brooke approached, wiping her dirt-stained hands. Dad, you never cease to amaze me. Who would have thought the workaholic businessman would become the children's best gardening teacher? And who would have thought the rebellious daughter would become one of the most respected farmers in the region? Arthur retorted affectionately. I wasn't rebellious. I was determined. True. And it was your determination that brought us here. Caleb joined the group, carrying little Arthur in his arms. How are the gardeners doing? Grandpa's teaching me about planting life, Evelyn answered seriously. Planting life? Caleb asked, amused. It's when you plant something that will grow and make the world more beautiful, she explained. Arthur was touched by his granddaughter's interpretation. Exactly, Evelyn, it's about planting life. Later that night, after the children had gone to sleep, Arthur, Brooke, and Caleb sat on the porch to talk, as had become tradition. Dad, Brooke said, can I make a confession? Always. Sometimes I'm afraid that all of this is temporary, that you'll grow tired of this simple life and go back to the world of big business. Arthur was surprised by his daughter's concern. Brooke, why do you think that? Because it was such a drastic change. From urban multi-billionaire to rural grandfather. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Arthur took his daughter's hand. Brooke, look at me. This life we have here, this family we've built, is the only real thing I've ever had. Everything else was just noise. Really? Don't you miss anything from your previous life? What would I miss? The constant stress, the endless meetings, the loneliness? Arthur shook his head. The only thing from my previous life that has value are the lessons I learned from my mistakes. Caleb leaned forward. Mr. Arthur, can I say something I've been observing? Of course, Caleb. You didn't change your life. You found your true life. All that business frenzy was you trying to fill a void. Now the void is filled. With what? Arthur asked, although he already knew the answer. With real purpose, with true love, with genuine presence. Brooke squeezed her father's hand. Caleb is right. You're not playing the role of a devoted grandfather. You genuinely are a devoted grandfather. And do you know what's most incredible? Arthur said. I wake up excited every day, not because I'm going to make money or close deals, but because I'm going to spend time with people I love doing things that matter. And what matters most to you now, Dad? Arthur looked at the house where his grandchildren were sleeping, at the ranch that had become the center of their lives, at the daughter and son-in-law who had transformed him into a better person. Watching Evelyn and Arthur grow up healthy and happy, supporting you in all your projects and dreams, helping this community thrive, and maybe, he smiled mysteriously, having a few more grandchildren to spoil. Brooke laughed. Dad, Caleb and I are still handling 2 young kids. No pressure, Arthur said, also laughing. But I love being a grandfather. It's the best job I've ever had. Better than being CEO of multiple companies? Caleb teased. Caleb, there's no comparison. As CEO, you can be fired, replaced, forgotten. As a grandfather, you're forever. And besides, the emotional salary of being a grandfather is unbeatable. They talked late into that night, planning improvements for the ranch, discussing the children's education, and simply enjoying each other's company. 10 years later, Arthur was sitting on the same porch, but now at 70 years old and with 5 grandchildren. Besides Evelyn and Arthur, Brooke and Caleb had 3 more children. Martha, in honor of the dear housekeeper who had passed away 2 years earlier, Caleb Jr. and Anna Evelyn. The ranch had expanded and become a complete educational complex, with regular courses in sustainable agriculture, exchange programs with universities, and a research center for rural development. Arthur had written a book about his personal transformation, titled Second Chance: How I Found True Wealth. All proceeds from the book were donated to rural education programs. On a special morning, his 70th birthday, the whole family gathered to celebrate. Not just Brooke, Caleb, and the 5 grandchildren, but also friends from the community, ranch employees, and even some former business colleagues who had become true friends. Grandpa, Evelyn, now 17, and about to enter university to study sustainable agriculture, approached. "Can I make a speech at your birthday?" "Of course, my dear, but it doesn't need to be anything formal." Evelyn stood up and asked for everyone's attention. "Everyone, I want to talk about my grandfather. Not the famous multi-billionaire some of you knew from the newspapers, but the man who taught me that true wealth is measured in laughter, hugs, and special moments." Arthur felt his eyes fill with tears, a trait he had developed in recent years and was no longer ashamed of. "My grandfather taught me how to plant, how to care for animals, how to value honest work, and above all, to understand that love is a verb, not a noun. It's something you do, not something you say." The guests applauded, and Arthur stood up to hug his granddaughter. "Evelyn, thank you. You and your siblings have taught me more about life than I ever taught you." Little Arthur, now 15 and already showing an interest in veterinary medicine like his father, approached. "Grandpa, can you tell that story about when you discovered what really mattered in life?" "Which story, son?" "The story about when you were looking at the destroyed ranch and realized you had wasted too much time being just rich instead of being happy." Arthur smiled. That story had become family legend, always requested at gatherings and celebrations. "Well," he began, looking around at all the beloved faces, "it all started with a fire I thought was the end of everything, but which was actually the beginning of my real life." He told the story once again, but this time he noticed details he had never perceived before. How every difficult moment had been necessary to get them where they were now. How every mistake had taught a valuable lesson. How every tear of pain had been transformed into tears of joy. When he finished the story, Brooke stood up. "Dad, your birthday gift isn't something you can open. It's something you need to see." She guided Arthur to a wall of the ranch where a bronze plaque had been installed. The plaque read, "St. Evelyn Ranch Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Education, founded in memory of Evelyn Harrison and in celebration of Arthur Harrison's transformation from businessman to father, from multi-billionaire to true grandfather. Here one learns that real wealth is measured in love, not money." Arthur was moved as he read the words. "Brooke, it's the truth, Dad. You transformed your life and you transformed ours too. This ranch isn't just a business. It's a monument to the power of second chances." Caleb approached with an envelope in his hands. "Arthur, this is our joint gift to you." Inside the envelope was a letter written by all the ranch employees, neighbors, and community members, thanking Arthur for everything he had done for the region. The letter ended with a phrase that touched him deeply. "Thank you for teaching us that it is never too late to become the person you want to be." That night, after all the guests had left, Arthur found himself once again on the porch. This time, however, he wasn't alone or reflecting on losses. He was surrounded by 3 generations of family, all talking, laughing, and planning for the future. Grandpa, Anna Evelyn, the youngest at 8, approached and nestled into his lap. "Are you happy?" The simple, direct question from his youngest granddaughter made him pause and truly think. "Anna Evelyn, do you know what true happiness is?" "What?" "It's being exactly where you want to be, with the people you love most, doing things that truly matter." "So, are you happy?" Arthur looked around. Brooke and Caleb were talking about plans for a new greenhouse. Evelyn played with Arthur Jr., and Martha chased Caleb Jr. around the yard. The prosperous ranch stretched as far as the eye could see, and inside the house, photos of 3 smiling generations covered every wall. "Anna Evelyn," he answered, kissing the top of his granddaughter's head. "I'm more than happy. I'm complete." "What does it mean to be complete?" "It's when you look at your life and wouldn't change a thing. It's when you know you're living exactly the way you're supposed to be living." Anna Evelyn nodded seriously, as if she were storing that definition away to use later. Later that night, when everyone had finally gone to sleep, Arthur stayed alone on the porch for a few minutes. He looked up at the stars and silently talked to Evelyn, his wife. "Evelyn, we made it. Our daughter has become an extraordinary woman. Our grandchildren are growing up surrounded by love and solid values, and I I finally understood what you always tried to teach me, that the good life isn't about having, it's about being. It's not about outward achievements, it's about genuine connections. A gentle breeze drifted through the garden, stirring the flowers that Evelyn, his granddaughter, had planted that morning. Arthur chose to take it as a sign of approval. At 70 years old, Arthur Harrison had found something most people spend their entire lives searching for: peace with himself, genuine purpose, and unconditional love. He had learned that true wealth isn't measured in numbers on a bank statement, but in smiles around the dinner table, in spontaneous hugs, in "I love yous," said for no particular reason. He had discovered that real success isn't about how many businesses you own, but about how many lives you touch positively. It isn't about how much power you have over others, but about how much love you're able to give freely. Arthur smiled one last time at the stars and went inside. Tomorrow would be another day full of simple but precious moments: breakfast with the grandchildren, working on the ranch alongside his daughter and son-in-law, bedtime stories, and perhaps a few discoveries about the small miracles that happen when you're present enough to notice them. He had begun his story as a multi-billionaire who wept at the sight of a ranch in ruins. He was ending it as a truly rich man who smiled every day, watching life being built, cultivated, and celebrated around him. And life, Arthur had finally learned, was exactly that: an endless series of opportunities to choose love over fear, presence over absence, and meaning over mere success. End of story. This was a fictional story created to touch our hearts. Now tell us what you thought. What did you think of Arthur's transformation? Do you believe people can truly change the way he did? Leave your opinion in the comments with sincere words. Subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories.